The eternal dominion floated in the vacuum of space like a colossal omen of conquest. It was the pride of the Morgarian Empire, a dreadnought famed for its size and arsenal, bristling with advanced weaponry and adorned with trophies from countless conquered worlds. Stories said it could blockade entire star systems with minimal support, and its reputation had been earned through centuries of ruthless expansion. Yet, as it hung at the edge of an unremarkable solar system claimed by the United Earth Federation, the Morgarian flagship carried a tension that unsettled even its fearless crew. Word had come that Earth was sending a diplomat to negotiate the fate of their threatened colonies, and a single vessel, tiny, almost laughable, was now detected on the Dominion's long-range scanners. Grand Admiral Castraxus stood at the main viewport, his scaled hands locked behind his back. He had the lithe, tall physique common to Morgarians, with 4 nostrils that flared whenever he felt agitation or amusement. Right now, he felt both. His second-in-command, Commander Jeeve Lorax, hovered nearby, her ceremonial armor making small clinks whenever she shifted weight. So, Castraxus muttered, "That spec is the so-called diplomatic envoy the humans have sent us. Why do they bother? King Vex Maul has already declared their outer colonies to be part of the Morgarian Empire." "Sir," Jeeve Lorax began, "our reports say this particular diplomat is none other than Eleanor Petrov. She has successfully negotiated over a dozen peace treaties across multiple star systems. The humans, they seem to trust her implicitly." Castraxus emitted a short, dismissive laugh. 17 successful negotiations, I've heard. Meanwhile, the Morgarian Empire has conquered entire sectors in half that time. One human woman cannot possibly change the path King Vex Maul has set. He wants Earth's resources, and he will have them. Lorax hesitated, lowering her voice. "There are rumors about this woman, Admiral. Some call her the Witch of the Stars, suggesting she has never failed a single negotiation. Many who opposed her met unfortunate ends." "Old wives' tales," Castraxus scoffed. "I do not fear human superstitions. Our technology dwarfs theirs. Let them cling to their stories. In the end, the outcome will be the same." He flicked a taloned finger at a nearby control panel, summoning a communications link to the docking bay. Orders were given to prepare a security detail. The humans would be scanned thoroughly, their meager possessions seized or examined, and any threat would be stamped out at once. King Vex Maul, prideful ruler of the Morgarians, had decreed that this diplomat should be treated as a curiosity until he arrived. Then, he planned to deal with her in a fashion that would strike fear into the entire Federation. Jeeve Lorax bowed her head and departed to carry out her orders. Though she followed the Admiral dutifully, a subtle unease gnawed at her. She had read more detailed intelligence about Eleanor Petrov. The records indicated the woman was no ordinary negotiator. If the humans were so desperate as to send her alone, they either knew something Morgarians did not, or they simply had no better option. Neither possibility sat well with Lorax. Meanwhile, deep in the command suite of the Eternal Dominion, King Vex Maul himself awaited news. He stood nearly 4 meters tall, a monstrous figure with a battle-scarred exoskeleton glinting under the chamber's harsh lights. 6 arms protruded from his torso. 2 were his natural limbs, while the other 4 were augmented cybernetics, their metallic joints humming softly with each flex. His crown connected directly to the Dominion's central weapons system, allowing him to control entire fleets by mere thought. A show of strength like no other. He had used it to subjugate multiple star systems swiftly, ensuring that no species dared challenge Morgarian superiority. His mouth parts clicked in irritation as he studied holographic projections of Earth's colonies. The humans were scattered across nearby star systems, still relatively new to faster-than-light travel. To him, they were scarcely worth the trouble. But the resources on some of their outlying worlds were substantial, and their strategic location would serve as a perfect staging ground for further expansions. He intended to break Earth's spirit by executing its representative, broadcasting the event so other species would see the futility of resistance. When a subordinate announced that the human envoy's vessel had docked, the king's lips curled into what, for Morgarians, resembled a sneer. "Escort this envoy to me," he ordered, "and ensure that every protocol is followed to the letter. I want her to see the splendor of what will soon conquer her entire world." Far below, in a sprawling hangar bay that could house fleets of smaller ships, a small human craft had just touched down. It looked fragile next to the towering Morgarian. Interceptors and heavy assault vehicles. From this craft stepped a single woman in a modest gray suit. Her hair, dark with silver streaks, was swept back in a tight bun. She carried herself with calm composure, as if walking into a routine meeting. No fear crossed her features, though she was surrounded almost instantly by armed Morgarian soldiers. The security chief, a hulking figure with scars etched across his scaly face, demanded that she remove all personal effects. Eleanor Petrov obliged, taking off a simple wooden pendant that hung around her neck. "It is a cultural relic," she explained with a tone of polite firmness. "I would prefer to keep it with me." The security chief snorted, unimpressed. "We decide what you keep, human." He tossed the pendant into a scanning tray. "Do not test our patience." Eleanor gave a small shrug, as though she were used to such treatment. Yet, if one looked closely, there was a brief flicker in her eyes, something that hinted at a far greater depth to her placid demeanor. "I will cooperate, of course," she said quietly, turning her attention to the corridors and the imposing structure around her. Armed Morgarians marched her through labyrinthine halls of metal and bone-like adornments. The Empire's culture prized displays of conquered species, so the architecture was etched with jagged reliefs depicting wars and subjugations. In passing, they encountered trophies from other civilizations, statues, flags, even charred scraps of technology pinned to the walls. Commander Jeeve Lorax joined the escort. She watched Eleanor with curiosity. The human commented softly on the design of the ship, noting the propulsion modifications that Morgarians had adopted from species called the Taurians. Lorax was taken aback. "You are well informed," she remarked, her secondary eyelids blinking in mild surprise. "Knowledge is power, Commander," Eleanor replied, offering a thin smile. "Especially in diplomacy." They arrived at enormous double doors carved from the bones of some colossal alien beast. Morgarian runes glowed faintly, telling the tale of ancient conquests. A herald stepped forward and commanded Eleanor to bow before entering, but she refused with gentle insistence. "Earth's representatives stand as equals," she said. "Or not at all." Such words caused a ripple of shock in the Morgarian retinue. But King Vex Maul had demanded her presence, so the herald could only splutter indignantly as the doors swung open. Inside was the throne room, so vast it resembled a cathedral of war. Alien bones shaped the pillars, while the floor was inlaid with precious metals from ravaged worlds. At the far end stood a monstrous throne, part metal, part organic remains fused into a seat that commanded both awe and horror. King Vex Maul loomed on that throne, exuding an aura of cruelty. His eyes fixed upon the diplomat as she approached, and his voice echoed across the chamber. "So the humans send a single gray-haired female to plead for mercy. How quaint. Did they truly believe such a meager offering would sway me?" Eleanor halted at a precise distance. She carried herself with impeccable posture, arms loosely at her sides, as though this were merely a formal gathering rather than an audience with a galactic tyrant. "Your Majesty," she began, her voice calm and clear. "I am Eleanor Petrov, representing the United Earth Federation. I have come in the hope of establishing a peaceful resolution to this conflict." A rumble of laughter erupted from Vex Maul's mouthparts, joined by the derisive chuckles of his court. "Peaceful resolution? There will be no peace until Earth is under Morgarian rule. We have already claimed your outer colonies. Your forces have not the strength to challenge us. You are prey, little human. Prey does not negotiate with its hunter." Eleanor's gaze flicked briefly to Commander Lorax, who stood to one side, her stance rigid. Then she turned her attention back to the king. With respect, It is unwise to underestimate an opponent you do not fully understand, Your Majesty. Such words brought an instant hush to the hall. Morgarians were unaccustomed to hearing implied threats from those they considered inferior. Slowly, deliberately, the king rose from his throne, his augmented arms flexing. "We do not fear your kind," he snarled, "nor do we fear the unknown. Perhaps you require a demonstration of what happens to those who defy me." He reached into a compartment beside his throne and withdrew the wooden pendant that had been seized from Eleanor. Bits of scanning residue still clung to it, a sign the Morgarians had tested it thoroughly. Holding it up for all to see, Vexmal sneered. "Is this your treasured artifact? Some worthless carved wood?" Eleanor inclined her head slightly. "It is a symbol from Earth's oldest traditions." "Meaningless superstition," the king proclaimed, then crushed the pendant in his powerful grip. Bits of wood scattered on the polished floor. Several of his courtiers laughed cruelly. Commander Lorax inhaled sharply, sensing a shift in the atmosphere. She had caught something in Eleanor's eyes, a flicker of anger, maybe something deeper. Yet the diplomat remained composed, making no move of aggression. She simply lowered her eyelids for a moment, as though she were mourning the destruction of a precious object. Vexmal, interpreting her silence as fear, bellowed. "You see, humans have no bargaining power here. I shall broadcast your execution so that Earth's leaders learn the futility of resisting the Morgarian Empire. Guards, seize her." A wave of heavily armed Morgarians advanced. Before Lorax could intervene or protest that the diplomatic accords were being broken, the guards converged on Eleanor. The next moment happened so fast that bystanders could scarcely track it with their eyes. Two guards tumbled backward with their limbs bent at impossible angles, while a third staggered away, clutching his throat. It was as though the human had moved in multiple directions at once, dealing crippling blows with lethal precision. Alarms rang out. King Vexmal roared with fury. More guards charged, aiming their plasma rifles. But Eleanor, with a fluid motion, seemed to pluck something invisible from her jacket, and arcs of shimmering energy flared across the near soldiers. They collapsed, howling in pain. The entire throne room erupted in chaos. "How dare you?" the king thundered, activating his personal shield generator. A shimmering barrier enveloped his throne, a force field known to neutralize even antimatter warheads. He believed himself invulnerable. Yet Eleanor walked forward as calmly as if the barrier were mere mist. The field crackled and bent around her figure, distorting with an eerie hum. Then it collapsed altogether, the power nodes overloading in a violent shower of sparks. Soldiers all around fired in desperation. Blinding volleys of energy blasts filled the air. When the glare receded, Eleanor stood untouched, the ornate floor scorched around her. The onlookers stared in dismay. The remains of the wooden pendant had begun to stir as if moved by an unseen hand. Fragment by fragment, they vibrated, drifting closer together in slow spirals. "What are you?" hissed a nearby officer, trembling. Eleanor's voice, once measured and diplomatic, held an older, more ominous resonance. "You were warned not to provoke me." She turned her gaze upon Vexmal, who was furiously tapping commands into the neural interface of his crown, summoning reinforcements. "I told you that Earth's traditions run deeper than you imagine. Some call me many names. Baba Yaga is one of them." The king refused to submit. He triggered a hidden mechanism, and part of the throne's dais opened to reveal a colossal suit of battle armor. It rose around him, piece by piece, its mechanical arms clamping over his augmented limbs. With a cacophony of whirs and clanks, the king was fused into a 10-meter war machine bristling with weapons and thrusters. Hovering a meter above the floor, the metal titan fixated its multiple cannons on the lone human. "Now let us see your sorcery withstand the pinnacle of Morgarian engineering." King Vexmal boomed through the armor's external speakers. Fire! A hailstorm of missiles and energy beams converged upon Eleanor's position. The force was enough to shatter metallic columns and send chunks of the floor flying. When the debris cleared, She stood unscathed at the center of a crater. The fragments of her pendant orbited her like tiny satellites, glowing faintly with an otherworldly aura. With a flick of her wrist, each shard shot through the air, striking key junctures in the king's battle armor. Sparks and smoke erupted as systems overloaded. The entire mech lurched, struggling to maintain altitude. "Impossible," snarled Vex Maul, one of his robotic arms jerking uselessly. "This must be some advanced human technology." "Technology?" Eleanor repeated softly. "No, this is far older than your circuits or your starships." She stepped forward, pressing her palm to the armor's leg. An ear-splitting screech of tortured metal followed. The dense plating crumpled beneath her hand, folding in on itself. The war machine toppled, slamming onto the floor with a thunderous impact that rattled the entire throne room. Cries of alarm and terror spread throughout the chamber. Commander Lorax found herself rooted to the spot, witnessing a scenario she never could have conceived. Her mighty king, pinned and helpless, while a single human stood over him as though deciding his fate. Eleanor leaned down, tapping lightly on the mech's visor. It shattered, revealing Vex Maul's wide, terrified eyes. "Now that you see the danger in threatening Earth," she said, her voice returning to a measured calm, "we can discuss the terms of peace." Whispers raced through the crowd of onlookers. Some dropped their weapons. Others stared, slack-jawed, at the being who had dismantled Morgarian defenses so effortlessly. Even Grand Admiral Castraxus, who had boasted earlier of his unstoppable fleets, stood in dazed silence. King Vex Maul, pinned in the wreckage of his ultimate armor, mustered a final shred of defiance. "I am King Vex Maul, conqueror of 1,000 worlds. I will not cower before your illusions." "This is not illusion," Eleanor replied softly. "I come as a diplomat, but I have endured centuries of dealing with bullies of every shape and species. One might say it is a specialty of mine. Will you continue to provoke me?" The king's breath rasped in and out, his augmented arms twitching with glitching circuits. Commander Lorax saw the raw fear in his eyes. She stepped forward and lowered her rifle, addressing her monarch in a carefully controlled tone. "Your Majesty, the accords of diplomatic protection may not mean much to you, but if we push this confrontation any further, I fear we risk the entire empire. We must listen to her terms." "Traitor!" Vex Maul choked, turning his fury on her. "You would have me kneel to some archaic earth witch. I would have you preserve our civilization," Lorax said, a tremor in her voice. "There is more at stake than your pride. This being has shown she can dismantle our greatest technologies as if they were toys. We should at least hear her out." The king let out a strangled growl, but he ceased struggling. Eleanor rose to her feet. The swirling fragments of the wooden pendant drifted back toward her, mending themselves piece by piece, until the pendant hung once more around her neck, whole and unscarred. "All I require is a simple arrangement," she said. "Withdraw from Earth's outlying colonies, sign a non-aggression treaty, and pay reparations for the damage you've wrought. In return, we will let the Morgarian Empire continue unopposed, so long as it does not attempt to conquer us again." A ripple of stunned murmurs passed through the assembled soldiers and courtiers. One brash officer shouted that Morgarians should never surrender to an inferior species, but Commander Lorax quickly silenced him with a glare. Even in the face of humiliation, the fear of annihilation hung heavily in the air. King Vex Maul's multiple eyes flicked to the battered remains of his once invincible armor. He felt the weight of 1,000 stares, saw the pale expressions of subordinates who had never witnessed him defeated. The bitterness in his voice was thick. "You claim to want peace, yet you stand here like an executioner." "If I wanted to kill you, Your Majesty," Eleanor replied, "it would have happened minutes ago. This is your chance to avoid that fate. Consider it carefully." Commander Lorax lifted her head. "Admiral Castraxus, I propose we convene a War Council meeting immediately. Her demands, though severe, may be preferable to continuing an unwinnable conflict." The Grand Admiral, still trembling from the shock of seeing the king bested, nodded slowly. Yes, I will relay a request to the council. At once, Eleanor gave a polite inclination of her head. While you do that, I will need access to your communication facilities to inform my government. I also request suitable quarters. Nothing extravagant. Privacy is all I need. Though seething, King Vexmal at last signaled his grudging approval. 2 guards hesitantly approached to help extricate him from the ruined armor. As they worked the twisted metal aside, the king's gaze never left Eleanor. His hate-filled stare promised vengeance, but it was tempered by an undeniable wariness. She turned and strode out, escorted by Commander Lorax. The crowd parted before her, like a tide, yielding to an unstoppable force. In the aftermath, only the rasp of the king's breath and the crackling sparks of wrecked machinery filled the throne room. In a corridor that branched off from the throne chamber, Lorax led the way with purposeful steps, though her posture was rigid. "You are not what I expected," she ventured quietly, casting a sidelong glance at the human. Eleanor offered a faint smile. "That sentiment is mutual, Commander. Many consider Morgarians mindlessly aggressive, yet here you are, trying to avoid unnecessary bloodshed." "It is not my place to question His Majesty," Lorax murmured. "But I do not wish our empire to be destroyed by a foe we barely comprehend." "I understand." Eleanor's voice softened. "Despite what you witnessed, I don't relish violence. In truth, I have negotiated peaceful solutions to conflicts for a very long time. It's why my people sent me here." A short silence followed, punctuated only by the rhythmic clang of their footsteps on the metallic floor. Lorax turned down another corridor, leading to a suite of guest rooms once reserved for foreign dignitaries who visited the Morgarian court under less hostile circumstances. Guards posted at the doors stiffened at her approach. In the suite, Lorax motioned for Eleanor to enter. "You may use the communication console inside." "I will. Inform the War Council that you expect to speak with them soon." Eleanor's gaze flicked over the room. A sparse but clean environment, with an imposing metal table, chairs sized for Morgarians, and a wide viewport revealing the void of space beyond. "Thank you, Commander." Lorax paused at the threshold, wrestling with a question. "My king destroyed your pendant, yet it reassembled itself. How is that possible? I saw you manipulate the pieces with no apparent device or technology." Eleanor rested a hand on the wooden charm, now lying against her chest. "The story behind it is older than Earth's current civilization. Magic is not the term I'd use, but perhaps it's the closest your language can capture." The Morgarian's scales rippled in an involuntary shudder. "In all my experience, I have never encountered an ability that defied our understanding of physics so thoroughly." "Sometimes," Eleanor replied, "what we call physics is just the beginning of knowledge. There are hidden aspects to reality, Commander, ones that your kind or mine have barely begun to explore. Perhaps that is the true reason so many species destroy themselves before they can truly expand. They lack the humility to accept the unknown." Lorax let the words sink in. Finally, she bowed her head in a gesture of acknowledgement and stepped back, allowing the door to slide shut. Eleanor was left alone. She walked to the communication console and activated it, entering a set of encryption protocols known only to high-ranking Earth officials. The Federation needed to know what transpired here, and quickly. The conversation that followed was terse and urgent. A distant figure, presumably an Earth government official, greeted her with thinly veiled relief. "We've been waiting on your signal, Diplomat Petrov." The Morgarians accepted the meeting. Eleanor exhaled. "They did, though not in the manner we hoped. King Vexmal attempted to publicly execute me, so I had to persuade him otherwise. The good news is that negotiations are now feasible." The official's tone betrayed shock. "We'd heard rumors, but we never imagined he would try to kill a diplomat during an official audience." "He was bold," Eleanor said dryly. "He'll be more cautious now. Listen, I need the Federation to be prepared to sign a non-aggression treaty with Morgaria. They'll likely demand concessions, but I plan to hold firm on the release of our colonies and reparations." "Do you think Earth can hold to that?" "Yes, absolutely," came the immediate response. "We just want our people back and to end this conflict." We don't have the resources for a prolonged war with a civilization as advanced as theirs. Eleanor allowed a faint smirk. Their technology is impressive, but not invincible. They learned that the hard way. Before the official could ask for details, she closed the transmission. She knew the War Council meeting would be called soon, and she would have to endure another round of Morgarian wrath. For the next hour, she rested. The suite provided a recharging moment. Her brand of powers, for lack of a better term, demanded mental stamina. As she gazed through the viewport at the stars, she allowed herself a small reflection. The life she led was long and winding, bridging centuries. The legends that humans whispered about Baba Yaga, the old witch of the forests, were but fragments of a deeper truth. She had learned to walk among modern societies, harnessing those ancient secrets in quiet ways. Mostly, her role was diplomatic, preventing catastrophes whenever possible. But occasionally, she had to show a darker side of herself. Soon, Commander Lorax returned, flanked by guards. She announced that the War Council would assemble in a secure chamber, a place designed for the highest-level strategic discussions. Eleanor followed willingly, though her presence set many Morgarian soldiers on edge. She could feel them flinch whenever her eyes passed over them. The War Council's chamber was a circular hall dominated by a holographic table that displayed star maps and troop deployments. Around it stood several ranking officers, each dressed in ornate armor. Grand Admiral Castraxus was among them, alongside political figures who advised the throne. King Vex Maul, pride dented but still projecting authority, sat at the apex of the table on a slightly raised platform, as if determined to maintain a symbolic advantage. Eleanor took a position opposite the king, folding her hands. "Shall we begin?" One council member, an elderly Morgarian with elaborate markings on her exoskeleton, cleared her throat. "We have convened to discuss the possibility of your demands. Our initial stance is that Morgaria does not yield to intimidation. But in light of current circumstances, we will hear you out." The session became tense with arguments and counter-arguments. Some Morgarians demanded that they gather more fleets and strike at Earth immediately, hoping to catch humanity unprepared. But others, recalling the unstoppable display in the throne room, questioned if any number of warships would truly suffice. It was an unprecedented debate in Morgarian history, as never before had they considered stepping down from conflict. Eleanor spoke with measured confidence. She reminded them that Earth was not the real threat. Rather, it was the entity standing before them. She promised that as long as they refrained from invading or assaulting Earth colonies, the Federation would not impede Morgarian interests elsewhere. Reparations were non-negotiable, but Eleanor indicated that Earth could be flexible about the scale of those payments, provided all prisoners were returned safely and the aggression ceased. At first, King Vex Maul responded with scoffs and scowls, but his counselors urged him to reconsider. The memory of his helplessness still hung thick in the air. Eventually, it was decided that a short recess would allow them time to deliberate privately. Eleanor was escorted out, leaving the War Council to debate in hushed, urgent tones. While waiting, she discovered that dozens of human prisoners were indeed held in the detention levels. Morgarian guards had caught them during the rapid invasion of frontier worlds, and the king had planned to use them as leverage. Eleanor demanded these prisoners be released to her custody. When the War Council reconvened, they grudgingly agreed, provided that the negotiations continued without further displays of violence. Eleanor forced a smile at that. She accepted the terms, making it clear that if Morgarian forces harmed any more humans, she would not hesitate to defend them in the same manner she had defended herself. By the third day, the outlines of a treaty were drawn up. The War Council drafted official documents. Morgarian fleets would pull back from all claimed human colonies. Certain reparation amounts would be transferred to aid in reconstruction, and a binding non-aggression pact between Morgaria and the United Earth Federation would be enacted. King Vex Maul opposed this vehemently, but the council overruled him in a rare step that defied tradition, citing the need to preserve the empire from an existential threat. That afternoon, Commander Lorax led Eleanor to the detention blocks. Inside were more than 20 human colonists, disheveled and exhausted from mistreatment, yet still alive. At the sight of another human, they rushed forward, voicing disbelief and relief. Some recognized Eleanor by name, having heard of her from Federation broadcasts. "They said you were coming," whispered a young woman, tears in her eyes. "But we didn't dare believe it." Eleanor gently calmed them. "We have an agreement. You'll be heading home soon. Let's get you to safety." From a corridor behind them, King Vex Maul approached with a small retinue, his posture rigid, his augmented arms twitching with frustration. Though he loomed over everyone present, he no longer made any move to harm the human prisoners. Instead, he gave them a disdainful look, then focused on Eleanor. "I am told the final withdrawal orders have been issued. Consider it a temporary measure, woman. The Morgarian Empire does not forget or forgive such humiliation." Eleanor inclined her head. "I do not expect forgiveness from you, Your Majesty, nor do I seek it. Let's hope in time your empire will recognize the benefits of cooperation over conquest." He bared his mouth parts in a gesture halfway between a sneer and suppressed rage. "Keep your philosophies. One day, we will surpass even the powers you wield." She reached for the pendant around her neck and unhooked it, extending it toward the king. Those standing around them watched, baffled by the gesture. "Take it if you like. Let it remind you of what happened here." Vex Maul recoiled slightly, suspecting a trick. His pride refused to let him show fear, but the memory of how she manipulated the wooden fragments was still fresh. "You expect me to accept that thing? It's only wood," she said calmly. "The real power was never inside it. It was always mine." With that, she set the pendant on a console near him. The king's eyes flicked to it, then back to her. He made no move to pick it up, uncertain if it was safe or if it might harbor some residual curse. This only heightened the tension, but Eleanor turned away, gently guiding the freed colonists toward the docking bay. Commander Lorax followed at her side, silent until they reached the corridor leading to the shuttle area. At last, the Morgarian officer spoke, her voice heavy with conflicting emotions. "We are not used to being on the defensive. Our empire has ruled with an iron fist for countless generations." "I can see that," Eleanor said, "and you're not alone. Many empires rise and fall by that same principle." Lorax glanced at the colonists. They looked weary, but gratitude lit their faces. Then her 4 eyes met Eleanor's calm gaze. "If we ever cross paths again, if Morgaria challenges Earth in the future, will we face more beings like you? Or are you unique among your people?" Eleanor's expression held a quiet mystery. Humanity is vast and diverse. Some of us hold to ancient traditions. Others rely on science alone. But we have learned to blend old knowledge with new technology. There may be more like me, or there may not be. Pray you never have to find out. A hush followed. The guards around them fidgeted uneasily. Lorax gave a slow nod. "I understand. I will advise caution to any who suggest resuming hostilities." Before they boarded the shuttle, a final Morgarian approached with an electronic tablet. "The War Council has finalized the treaty," he said curtly. "We will transmit the details to your Federation. Our forces will retreat from your outlying systems immediately." "Thank you," Eleanor replied. "On behalf of my people, I appreciate your cooperation. May we never again be forced to meet under such violent circumstances." The shuttle doors slid open, allowing the human colonists to file inside. They let out sighs of relief as they took seats, some casting anxious glances back at the imposing Morgarians. Eleanor lingered a moment, meeting Commander Lorax's gaze once more in a silent farewell. Then she stepped into the shuttle. As the craft detached and glided out of the hangar bay, the colonists watched the eternal dominion shrink away behind them. The sense of awe was tangible. One of the younger prisoners, a dark-haired man who looked barely out of his teens, finally spoke up. "Is it true? You fought their king and his entire guard alone." Eleanor eased into a seat, exhaling. "I negotiated," she corrected, a small smile playing at the corner of her lips. "Sometimes negotiations can look like a fight." He shook his head. "I've heard stories about you, about how you single-handedly solved crises nobody else could. But this, I never thought I'd see it with my own eyes. A woman with dusty blonde hair leaned forward. MS. Petrov, the others said you were unstoppable. You walked through their shield. You. She paused, searching for words. They said you're a witch. Stories have a tendency to grow more dramatic in retelling. Eleanor responded gently. But if calling me a witch helps them make sense of what they saw, so be it. Silence fell as the shuttle cleared the gravitational field of the Morgarian dreadnought. Stars sprawled across the viewport in every direction. It was a stark reminder that the galaxy was vast, full of mysteries and perils beyond imagining. Eleanor tapped a few commands into the shuttle's console, verifying the jump coordinates for a rendezvous with a Federation cruiser. She felt the tension in her limbs slowly recede. The energies she had invoked back in the throne room always took a toll on her. The colonists may have seen her as invincible, but she knew the cost of unleashing that part of herself. One of the older captives, a tall man with streaks of gray in his beard, cleared his throat hesitantly. Are we truly safe now? That king seemed ready to kill us at any moment. As safe as we can be, Eleanor said. The Morgarians have signed a formal treaty. They'll pull back, at least for the foreseeable future. Their war council fears what might happen if they don't. He let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for hours. I never thought I'd see the day they'd surrender territory. Fear can be a powerful motivator, Eleanor replied. She gazed out at the stars again. Though fear alone might not hold them back forever. My hope is that after this close brush with disaster, they'll realize that humility is sometimes the wiser path. The shuttle's engines hummed, and they began accelerating toward the jump point. Behind them, the Eternal Dominion drifted in silence, powerless to stop their departure. Scenes of their confrontation still burned fresh in Eleanor's mind. The king's monstrous armor, the wide-eyed shock of his guards, the hush when she forced him to the ground. She wondered if the Morgarians would eventually adapt, developing new technologies to challenge her kind of power. They were an industrious, resilient species, after all. Yet for the moment, at least, a crisis had been averted. Tens of thousands of human lives were spared. Earth would not face immediate devastation, and a measure of peace, however tenuous, was secured. The ship vibrated as the jump drive powered up, preparing to slice through the fabric of space-time. Once they cleared the final checks, the starfield outside elongated into streaks, and the shuttle blinked into faster-than-light travel. Some of the colonists uttered soft exclamations, relieved to be truly out of Morgarian territory. Eleanor relaxed against her seat, letting the hum of the engines lull her thoughts. She recalled ancient forests from centuries past, wild places of Earth that had given rise to the legends of Baba Yaga. Then she considered the advanced starships and cosmic empires of this era. Humanity had come so far, and yet it still carried pieces of its archaic mysteries into the future. Such was the nature of progress, layer upon layer of old and new, forging something entirely unique. A young woman seated next to Eleanor ventured a question in a hushed tone. MS. Petrov, may I ask, how did you come to have these powers? Is it something all humans can learn? Eleanor smiled. Not in the way you might think. It's an ancient discipline connected to Earth's folklore. Our planet has a deep history of beliefs. Some of them are more than mere superstition, but it's not widely known or practiced. In modern times, we rely on technology, logic, science. Only a few continue to walk the older paths. The woman nodded slowly, digesting that information. I suppose it's for the best. If everyone could do what you did, there'd be chaos. Perhaps, Eleanor murmured. Or perhaps we'd find new ways to live in harmony. Hard to say. The remainder of the journey passed in relative calm. They soon detected the Federation cruiser on their long-range sensors, waiting to escort them safely back to Earth-controlled space. As they neared the rendezvous, an automated hail came through, requesting identification. Eleanor responded, and the colonists erupted into subdued cheer when they realized rescue was truly at hand. Once docked, A medical team boarded to examine the freed prisoners. Officers from the Federation quickly whisked them away, offering warm blankets and urgent medical attention for any injuries. Eleanor lingered behind in the shuttle bay, conferring with a Federation commander who had come to greet her. "We received your updates about the treaty," the commander said, saluting her. "It's all of a news cycle now. The Morgarians are pulling out. People are calling you a hero. Some even say you single-handedly tamed their empire." Eleanor gave a faint shrug. They agreed to a ceasefire and the release of prisoners. "I wouldn't call them tamed. They'll regroup. But for the moment, yes, we have peace." The commander lowered his voice. "We also heard stories, improbable ones, that you disabled their war machines by yourself. That's going to raise a lot of questions among our leadership. If it helps them sleep at night, they can chalk it up to advanced infiltration tech," Eleanor said, her tone edged with weary amusement. "Let the details fade into rumor. If we truly want to preserve the peace, perhaps it's best the Federation not try to replicate what I can do." "Understood." The commander nodded gravely. "I'll do my best to keep the sensational gossip from causing any policy overreactions. We've enough trouble without stirring up fear that we're harboring unstoppable superweapons." "Precisely," Eleanor said, grateful for his tact. She gave a final glance at the corridor where the colonists had gone. "I should see to them, make sure they're properly debriefed and cared for. Some will need psychological support after what they endured." The commander stepped aside to let her pass, but then paused. "One more thing, Diplomat Petrov." She turned, eyebrows raised. "Thank you," he said simply. "We would have lost thousands more if not for your intervention." She inclined her head in acknowledgement. Then, with measured steps, she proceeded deeper into the cruiser. As she walked away, she felt the comforting hum of the Federation vessel's power systems, so different from the oppressive gloom of the Eternal Dominion. Though war had been averted for now, she could not shake the awareness that King Vex Mal's thirst for revenge might resurface someday. And if it did, there would be new challenges, new battles, perhaps more violent than the last. Still, for the immediate future, Earth had room to breathe. The Morgarian threat was quelled, and the knowledge of a hidden power within humanity, embodied by legends like Baba Yaga, remained their unspoken edge. Eleanor would continue her diplomatic missions, stepping lightly between the worlds of modern science and ancient magic, doing her best to foster peace where she could and to end conflicts that grew too dangerous. In her quarters aboard the Federation cruiser, she settled into a small bunk, clasping the wooden pendant she had reassembled. It felt warm against her fingertips, pulsing faintly with life only she could sense. She closed her eyes, letting her memories drift from a time long forgotten. Ancient forests of Earth, swirling mists that parted for a lonely cottage on chicken legs, midnight incantations whispered in old dialects. Over centuries, she had learned to merge that legacy with the new age of interstellar travel. Some called it magic, some called it psychic phenomena, others simply marveled at it. In the end, it mattered little what name it bore. Power was power, and how it was wielded was what truly counted. A message pinged on her console, likely official Federation dispatches wanting details for their archives. She ignored it for the moment, allowing herself a rare moment of reflection. The final image in her mind's eye was King Vex Mal lying pinned beneath the wreckage of his own technology. She did not enjoy humiliating him. She much preferred the art of words, but sometimes words alone weren't enough. One day, she mused, the Morgarians might learn a greater truth, that the galaxy was filled with mysteries beyond the grasp of brute force or advanced machinery. If that day arrived, perhaps they would evolve into something wiser. If not, she would be there, quietly waiting among the stars, ready to remind them why the old stories of Earth spoke of witches who should never be crossed. In the meantime, the ship's engines rumbled softly as they set a course for home. The colonists were safe. A treaty was signed. Earth was spared invasion and destruction. Small victories, but precious ones. And for Eleanor Petrov, known in hushed whispers by countless races, it was enough. At least until the next empire threatened to grind entire worlds beneath its heel. Then, once more, the quiet figure of an aging diplomat might appear at their doorstep, carrying ancient secrets from a planet called Earth, and the legend of Baba Yaga would continue among the stars.